Hello folks, Halcylion here. You know, many of you have asked me to document my adventures, but it's just a whole lot of running around, buying cheap wares and trying to sell them for profit, and now, not so many of you keep watching. I don't blame you, after all I did say this was not going to be a very exciting run. This is especially true in today's episode where I finally get around to doing that maneuver I teased for a long time. Destabilizing the market to create trade opportunities that would increase my skill to an acceptable level. Welcome to episode 8 of Trader Stories. Today our journey starts outside Zionica, just like it did in the second episode. And just like in episode 2, today we'll run around from city to city doing trades and using my enormous wealth to manipulate the markets by buying local workshops, changing their production and immediately selling them. This operation, when executed correctly, can create demand for various goods. As an example, I bought all the workshops in Zionica and changed them into pottery shops. Clay is needed to produce pottery, and because none of the nearby villages produce any clay, I can go to Pencanok, buy some, and then sell it here for a 300% markup. The profit will then increase my trade skill and get me closer to my goal of fief trading. That will open a world of possibilities. This complex operation needs a simple name. Shop switching. Doesn't sound too good, but it's the best I can do for now. I'm open to suggestions if any of you has a better name in mind. Shop switching involves a lot of walking through towns, and that can be quite tedious. Fortunately, sometimes you can find horses loitering about, and you can borrow one for the duration of your visit and ride to each of these workshops. What you gotta do now is talk to a shop worker, buy the business, change its production, finalize the deal, and then immediately talk to the worker and tell him to sell. I find it amusing that if you own that workshops for 3 seconds, the worker is like, "We've had a good run, boss. I hope we'll work together again." No, we won't. But don't you dare change the production. Now that you understand what this maneuver entails, let me tell you how I've done it. I didn't do it in each and every region because that would be very time consuming, no. I just did shop switching in this area right here where our campaign began. It's right in the center of the continent, so it's pretty much the same distance away from all the major kingdoms, which makes it very easy for me to import whatever goods I want, whenever I want. The most important thing when executing this maneuver is to build 3 workshops of the same type in a single town. If a town has no iron mines around it, build smithies like I've done in Lycaron. If there's no grain farms anywhere near, build breweries like in Poros. And if a town is far from any sheep ranches, you build wool weaveries. Rote is the town I've chosen for this. So far, I've listed 4 of the 6 initial cities where I've done the shop switching. The remaining 2 are Gelmaris, where I built carpentry shops because it's close to wood country. And finally, in Amitatus, I switched the production to velvet, which would require cotton that can be imported from Amprella and Mezea. My journey through those 2 towns would take me through Saneopa, where I turned all the workshops into silversmiths. As I travel through each of these towns, I would of course keep an eye out for good deals and make some effort towards increasing my skill. Honestly, it's kind of a haze, so I'm not going to give you any details of trades executed in this phase. All I can say is that it was rather profitable even prior to shop switching, and to be truthful, I didn't have much faith in this maneuver. I thought I'd be better off just doing global trading and increasing my skill that way. I also visited the tavern of every city I passed through, seeking specialists that would join my cause. I would have liked to find a trader or an engineer, but at this point I take anyone who has skills I can put to use. Most taverns had no useful companions for hire, but I eventually ran across Nuldan the Prince, a skilled rogue in the Tavern of Amitatus, and in Seonon I found Shumzan the Falcon, a skilled tactician that would make a fine military commander or caravan leader. I have not yet decided what job I'll give him, but it'll be important. That's 5 out of 5 companions. If I want more, I'll have to increase the popularity of my clan. For now, this is all I have. But I also have one question. Why are the Aserai companions the best in business? Everyone else I meet has a skill of 60 in their field. These guys come with skills surpassing 100. Oh well, they must have worked hard to escape the desert because they don't like sand very much. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. During the shop switching phase, I would occasionally arrive in a town late at night and, well, people are asleep and shops can't be bought at that time, so I had to rest in town as well. But it's a waste to rest and not do smithing afterwards, so of course, I used some of my energy to craft some more ultra expensive weapons which I would sell whenever I needed a cash infusion. I liquidated some of those when my purchases got expensive or when my companions needed gear, but we've talked about this subject all throughout the previous episode, so I won't talk anymore about it today. But that shop switching stage was just a setup. A very long setup, but only after it was complete would my adventure truly begin, as I would put this method of market manipulation to the test. In theory, if I create a demand for certain goods in a zone, I should make a profit when I import this stuff. But in practice, other caravans can do this before me, make the big profits, and I'll just be the fool who paid heavy money to make it all possible. All I can do is hope that my efforts would pay off. That and keep grinding. My sole goal at the moment is getting the trade skill to 225, which for some reason it's more difficult than I expected. Once that is achieved, everything else is a piece of cake. At some point I leveled up and got a new focus point which went into trade. I did not need to spend it there, the perk I want is achievable even without full focus, but I've become so single-minded in the pursuit of my goal that everything else is a distraction. Anyway, with everything now in place, all that's left to do now is trade until the skill reaches 225. But that's unattainable in today's episode, so let's choose a target I can actually hit. I think if I reach level 175, that's good enough for now. So let's begin. Just as I was about to get started on trading, I got some big news from the wife. She gave birth to our first child, a daughter whom I named Meredith in honor of the first corporate empress who ruled all of Calradia in another timeline. Now, we've already mentioned most of the key events that took place in this journal entry, and now, the only thing left to talk about are the trade runs that actually made a meaningful contribution to my skill level. The first one of these was a supply run in Epic Town for iron that could be used in the smithies of Lycaron. There was no ore in this town, but in the village of Mekalovea I purchased 63 units for 100 dinars apiece, and in Marathea I got another 26 units for 88 dinars each. You'll always get cheaper goods if you buy directly from the village where they're produced, assuming it hasn't been plundered in a while. But I didn't go for the sale just yet. I decided to pass through Botania and purchase some more cheap goods like food, wood and clay, plenty of which were available in Seonon. But not all of those goods would reach the imperial markets because Marunath was experiencing some shortages and paid 11,000 for a lot of my wares. That large sale took my trade skill to 150 and I unlocked a new perk that may not actually work. Oh well, you need to pick one of these in order to progress to the next. Soon after, I learned that my actions in Epic Rotea had a negative impact on the workshop I built in that town. Because I bought all the available iron, its production severely decreased and so did my daily income, but to be honest, the importance of the daily income pales in comparison to my primary goal of increasing the trade skill. My next stop would be in Penkanok, where I sold mules, grain, and several other things, and I purchased clay, wine, and hogs. This transaction earned me another skill point. 24 left until today's objective is achieved. Basically, for every large sale I've done, I earned 1 skill point, but I'm not going to talk about each and every one of these. Or will I? After all, I need to reach that 10-minute mark. The reason of my visit through Botania was to buy cheap supplies which were supposed to make me big money and skill points when sold to the Empire. In Dunglanis, for example, I spent a whopping 26,000 on such wares, but as I've said, money is no issue. The trade skill is all that matters. If I could pay 1 million dinars right now to instantly skip the grind, I would, but that's not how it works. After the supply run was done, I went back to the Imperial Sales Zone, not before passing through Lagetta, where I took another tiny step towards my goal. Once I arrived in the Imperial Sales Zone, it was time to see whether my shop switching worked. Rote paid 78 dinars for every unit of wool, which was purchased for about 40 dinars apiece. Not bad, but also not really worth the investment if your goal is to make money. Next, it was time to test the carpentries in Jalmaris and see if they would pay well for the wood I brought. The initial price per unit was 82 dinars and the last unit sold for 48 dinars. Considering the fact that I paid less than 40 dinars for each pallet of hardwood, this was indeed profitable, to the degree where it earned me another skill point. Then I reached Zeonica, where its 3 pottery shops paid a good price for the clay I brought in from PC. The profit wasn't that big, but I got what I wanted. Next down on my list was Poros, which should be even more dependent on grain than it already was, thanks to the 3 breweries I installed in there. Only 15 dinars per sack of grain? That's way less than I expected. It looks like other caravans are cutting into my bottom line. I wish there was a way to raid them without becoming a wanted criminal. If I could sponsor some of these bandit clans to get together into a big party and start raiding other caravans, I definitely would. The roguery skill path should have one perk allowing you to do just that, but it currently doesn't. The next skill point I earned was in Lycaron, after I sold the iron ore for 150 dinars apiece. And my final stop for the sales session would be in Ametatis, where I earned close to 10k from the stuff I sold, but I got no skill point. And that was my first trade run. The second would take me all the way to Umbrella in search of cheap cotton, which would fetch a good price here in Ametatis. On my way there, I passed through Saneopa, where I bought lots of goods and sold some others, earning another skill point. But I wouldn't go directly to those cities because it would be far more profitable to pass through Argoron and buy cheap fish to sell to my destination. There's this saying I learned a long time ago: never travel empty. That should be your mantra as a trader. In Argoron I spent another 10k on lots of goods, and when I got to Mesea I started selling. In my experience, this town is always neglected by caravans, so it's always worth it to come here with a full inventory. I sold grain, fish, wine, clay, wood and iron among many other things, earning a total of 20,000 dinars, before spending some of that money on the cotton I set out to purchase. At the end of the transaction I was left with only 14k, but I earned another skill point, which is far more valuable than any money. Umbrella is like the solar opposite of Mesea because it's always stocked with lots of cheap goods, including the cotton I needed. All the goods I bought in here amounted to 25,000 dinars. With a full inventory, it was time to return to what I'm calling the Imperial Sale Zone and start making profits. But instead of going there directly, I would pass through every city in my way there, Sironea being the first among them. Here my trade skill reached level 158. Next town was Onira, which was useless. Soon after leaving that town I received a message that my companion's caravan got ambushed by looters. Well, I paid over 22,000 dinars for elite caravan guards, so there's nothing to worry about. And if the looters prevail, that gives me an excuse to fire my companion because I don't need 2 scouts in my clan. Danustica was the next town I was going to pass through. Apparently this one is also neglected by caravans because I managed to sell 17,000 worth of stuff in here, easily leveling up trade yet again. Soon after I reached Vostrum, where I also bought cheap goods and sold some stuff I got from earlier, taking yet another step towards my goal. Trade level 160. 15 more of these and we're done for today. Now that I'm getting close to the sales zone, I'm starting to doubt this is enough to get me to my objective. Eventually I got back to Lycaron. Unfortunately, I had no iron ore to sell here. But my second supply run was for cotton, which was supposed to bring me a profit in Ametatis. Its initial sale price here is 119. Considering I paid between 50 and 80 dinars for each unit, that's a good deal. The velvet weaveries did indeed create a huge demand for cotton here, earning me 12k from selling just that. With everything else I liquidated, my earnings in this town would amount to 27,000 and another point in trade. I also gained another point in Poros after selling 12k worth of stuff, and another in Zionica after earning another 10k. Whoever said trade isn't a good way of making money was wrong. True, it's much more tedious and less profitable than forging swords, but it's consistent and the trade skill you earn on the way to 1 million is more than worth it. In the future, the prices of smithing will be adjusted and you can say bye-bye to the easy 120,000 you get from a single javelin. You'd be lucky to get 10,000, which is still more than enough money for the amount of work it takes. But look at me, I can get tens of millions from selling weapons, but they're worthless without the ability to invest in settlements, which is why I work so hard to develop my trading ability. Money is worthless unless you can spend it. Anyway, in Jalmaris I earned another 8k, and my last stop for this second trade run will be in Rote, where I earned just as much money and another skill point. At this point my mercantile proficiency was at 164 and I would need to earn 11 more points to reach my desired objective. It looks like I must embark on a third trade run, this time in the desert. My target was Askar, a town famed for cheap horses, so I set sail. Not literally. First I'd stop by Lageta to earn another 6k. But no sane man goes to the desert without first stopping in Ortygia, and I consider myself quite sane. Only 3k? Oh well, next stop is in Kiaz. This town has cheap olives, flax and fish, which could be sold deeper in the desert, or in one of the imperial towns I will visit at the end of this trade run. Before buying anything, however, I decided to see how much money I would get for selling various goods still in my inventory. 10k and another skill point in trade, not bad. I would spend 13k on the aforementioned goods, but it's all for the trade skill. I'm not going to lie, the second half of this episode is quite repetitive. But y'all wanted a trader playthrough, what did you expect? Constant warfare? Politics? Intrigue? Nah fam, I'm all about getting the money before I start making enemies. It's a slow method of growing your empire, but it's the best there is, even though it's so tedious. I really feel the need to spill some blood right now, but I told myself I'll keep it peaceful this time around. It was especially difficult to keep my violent urges in check when I passed near this group of looters a bit earlier. We're not far from the finish line. I wasn't going to spend too much time in the desert, I just had to visit Sanala, spend 16k on local goods, sell some of mine, and then work my way to Askar and hit the mother lode. 18 Aserai horses with prices ranging between 1300 to 1600, grain that's 10 denars per sack, cheap mules, and so many affordable wares that motivated me to spend a total of 46,000 denars. And that's not all. Askar also paid big bucks for dates and fish, which I purchased from the other 2 desert towns I visited. And because I spent so much gold in here, I had to sell one of my javelins to get my money back. With this massive transaction now complete, it was time to go back to the Imperial Sales Zone and get the profits and the skill points. First, I would pass through Sanala yet again to sell some of the stuff I brought from Askar, earning 2 skill points at once. Oh yeah, that's some good progress. Now, to retrace my steps. In Kiyaz, I stocked up on more cheap stuff. In Ortygia, I earned 16k on the stuff I brought from the desert. In Legeta, I got another 17k and a trade level. And then for some reason, instead of going directly to my destination, I decided to pass through Botania, where I earned more money and skill points, so you know, it was worth the visit. I then noticed Ortygia was under siege, so I figured I'll head over there as fast as I can, and as soon as the siege ends, I can cash out. I expected food to be very profitable, but I was mistaken. Food was dirt cheap. But the trip was worth it nonetheless because for some reason, iron, wood and clay would fetch an enormous price. 10,000 denars earned, and trade was now at level 171. We're worming our way closer. Alright, you know what's next. Another loop through the Imperial towns I destabilized a long time ago. In Rote, I earned 6k, but no skill point. Jalmaris, 3k, no skill point. Zionica, net gain, 60 denars and 1 skill point. Weird. Poros, 11k, no skill point. Also bought beer worth 6k. Lycaron, not worth talking about. In Ametatus I got another 10k and my trade skill reached 173. We are inching closer. Finally, I reached Rote, where I got another 14k and 1 more skill point. Alright, one more sale and we're done, but I finished my circuits, so what's next? I guess I can buy some iron in Epic Town and then sell it in Lycaron. That should do it. But this town pays a very good price for Aserai horses, 2.4k each. And I can also sell some various foodstuffs I carry with me, and it all amounts to 17,461 denars and another beautiful skill point in trade. Finally! The milestone I set for myself today has been achieved. At last! I'm at a trade level of 175 and I get some wonderful perks to choose from. I get to pick an insurance policy either for my caravans or for my workshops. Workshops are a more stable source of income, so if I were to recommend one, I would say you take rapid development, but I am personally fully invested into caravans, so of course I want to get the most out of them. Insurance plans it is. I'll get more elite caravan guards for the same price, and if they fail me, I get a compensation of 5,000 denars, which is quite good. With this goal now achieved, we gotta take note of our accomplishments. This episode started in the 15th day of autumn, 1086, and now we are in the 9th day of summer, 1087. In almost 3 months of trading and manipulating the markets, we've almost doubled our money and finally reached a crucial milestone. Level 175 in trade. After another 50 trade levels, I obtained the key to my empire. The ability to convince noblemen to grant me ownership of their settlements in exchange for money, which, as you've seen, isn't too hard to earn if you're willing to put in the time and effort. Now, when an episode is near its end, I usually take some time to discuss future plans, but you know what? We'll leave that discussion for next time because this episode overstayed its welcome. With that said, I would like to thank you very much for watching and I hope to see you all next time. Goodbye.